Go ahead, judge me if you want. But tell me first what a woman is supposed to do when her husband turns into furniture in his own marriage. I was not cruel. I was tired of pretending Marcus still made me feel alive. So yes, I joked in front of everyone that he was too old to satisfy me. He just sat there with his hands folded, calm like always, as if my words could not touch him. By the end of that month, I was sure he had finally learned his place. I am Lyra Anselm, 34, and I work the front desk at a dental clinic, so of course I know how people sound when they pretend to be innocent. I am not pretending. I was not cruel. I was tired of being married to a man who moved through our house like furniture and still expected me to clap because he paid bills on time. So yes, I joked in front of people that my husband was too old to satisfy me. Marcus just sat there with his hands folded, calm like always, as if my words could not reach him. By the end of that month, I was sure he had finally learned his place. That was the thing about Marcus. Everyone called him steady, and of course they meant it like a compliment. His mother said it. My sister Clara said it. Even my parents said it when they wanted to remind me that not every man came home on time, cooked dinner, remembered school forms, and checked the locks before bed. I knew all of that. I was not blind. In the beginning, I even loved it. When we were younger, he used to bring coffee to the clinic before my early shift. No speech, no big romantic scene, just the cup placed on the counter with my name written wrong because the barista never heard him clearly. He remembered I liked extra foam. He remembered I hated cinnamon. Small things. Useful things. Marcus was always good at useful. The problem was that after 11 years of marriage, useful started to feel like a polite word for invisible. He loved through packed lunches, paid insurance, clean gutters, working breaks and quiet evenings. He did not love through heat. He did not look at me across a room like I was still the woman he had chosen. He looked at me like I was part of the schedule. Work became the place where I remembered I had a face. At the clinic, patients smiled when I greeted them. The hygienists asked where I bought my blouse. Men looked twice when I walked to the coffee shop beside the gym. I did not chase that attention. It happened. Of course it felt good. Any woman who says she does not notice being noticed is either lying or already too tired to care. Ethan worked at the gym next door. He was 31, a trainer, always in fitted shirts and always leaning against the glass door like the whole world had been built to give him flattering light. He started with little comments. He said the clinic looked brighter when I was at the desk. He said I had more energy than half the women in his morning classes. He asked if Marcus knew how lucky he was. I laughed because what else was I supposed to do, act offended by a compliment? I told myself it was harmless. Coffee was coffee. A joke was a joke. A woman could enjoy being seen without being accused of burning down her own marriage. Marcus noticed the later evenings first. He always noticed boring things. Receipts, times, miles on the car. Once, while I was putting my silver bank card back into my wallet after buying coffee, he asked why I had been stopping there so often. Not angry, not loud. Just soft curiosity, which somehow made it worse. He asked if something had changed. I told him nothing had changed except maybe I was tired of being questioned like a teenager. He folded his hands on the table and looked at me for a second too long. I hated that look. It was the same look he used when Sophie's teacher explained a missing assignment or when Liam insisted he had brushed his teeth and clearly had not. Patient, measured, old. I told him he was being insecure. He said he was only asking. I said only insecure men asked questions like that. After that, he did not push. He went back to packing Liam's lunch for the next morning, cutting the crusts off the sandwich because Liam had decided crusts were poison that week. That should have made me soften. It did not. It annoyed me. There he was, steady Marcus, quiet Marcus, useful Marcus, turning my life into a list of chores and then acting wounded because someone else remembered I was alive. 2 days later, Clara came over with her partner. and my mother dropped by with a cake she claimed she just happened to bake, though of course she wanted to inspect my marriage the way mothers inspect curtains. Nora, Marcus's mother, called and invited herself before I could stop her. The kids were happy because a full table meant dessert and attention. I decided I would make the evening warm. I would make it lively. I would remind everyone that I was still the person who could turn a dull room into something people remembered. Marcus cooked because he always cooked when people came over. He said he was faster at it, and I let him, because a man at the stove made me look lucky even when I did not feel lucky. He moved between the oven and the table with that quiet focus of his, asking Sophie about her school project, telling Liam to stop hiding bread rolls under his napkin, making sure Nora had the chair with the better back support. Everyone smiled at him for it. That was what bothered me. They saw care. I saw absence dressed up as responsibility. So I started talking. I told a story from the clinic, then one about a patient who flirted badly, then one about the gym next door without saying Ethan's name. Clara laughed at first. My mother laughed louder because she liked when I controlled the room. Marcus only smiled a little and kept serving potatoes. That small smile felt like a wall. I wanted him to react. I wanted proof there was still a man inside all that routine. So I joked that Marcus double-checked everything, even salt, even bedtime, even whether fun had been approved by some invisible committee. People chuckled. Marcus folded his hands beside his plate. I read it as embarrassment, and embarrassment meant I had finally reached him. Sophie asked why Daddy was quiet. I told her Daddy liked quiet because adventures made him sleepy. The adults gave that awkward little laugh people give when they are not sure if they are allowed to enjoy something. I should have stopped there, but stopping would have felt like losing the room. Marcus asked very calmly if I was finished. I heard a challenge in it. Maybe there was one. I told him I was only warming up. Nora's mouth tightened. Clara looked down at her glass. My mother still smiled, but not as brightly. I did not care. I had a room, and the room was listening. That was all I wanted that night. I said Marcus acted like bedtime was his favourite part of marriage, and the room went so still that even Liam stopped moving his bread roll under the table. I laughed first because when you laugh first, people usually follow. My mother gave one small sound, not quite a laugh, but enough for me to keep going. Clara's eyes lifted to mine in that warning way sisters use when they think they know you better than you know yourself. Of course she thought I was being too much. Clara always liked softer women, quieter women, women who apologized before anyone even accused them. Nora did not laugh at all. She sat with both hands around her water glass and told me, in that sharp, careful voice of hers, that a wife should be careful with words spoken in front of children. I told her it was just a joke. I said Marcus knew me. I said everyone needed to stop treating a harmless line like I had thrown a plate. Marcus did not defend me, which annoyed me more than Nora's tone. He only looked at Sophie, then at Liam, then back at his own plate. His hands were still folded. Calm. Always calm. Like I was some weather pattern he had already decided to wait out. That made me hotter inside. After dinner, Clara helped me clear the plates, but she did it quietly, scraping food into the trash without meeting my eyes. I asked if she was going to lecture me too. She said she only thought Marcus looked hurt. I told her Marcus always looked hurt when the attention was not on him. That was not true exactly, but it sounded true enough to say. Clara said she did not think this was about attention. I told her she was being dramatic like Nora. She dried her hands, kissed the kids goodnight, and left earlier than usual. My mother stayed behind for a few minutes and told me not to let everyone make me feel guilty. She said men like Marcus got comfortable and then acted surprised when their wives wanted more. That felt like air after being held underwater. I needed one person to say I was not cruel. My mother said it without using the word. Later, after everyone left, I found Marcus in the guest room putting a pillowcase on one of the spare pillows. I asked if he was really moving rooms because of a dinner joke. He said he needed space. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just that. Space. I told him he was embarrassing me in my own house. He asked softly if I had heard Sophie ask what I meant at the table. I said children ask things all the time. He said Liam had been quiet since dessert. I told him not to use the kids as a shield because he could not take a joke. That was when he folded the pillow under his arm, looked at me with those tired eyes, and asked what had changed with me. I hated the question because it sounded gentle, but it was not gentle to me. It sounded like a report being opened. I told him nothing had changed except maybe I was finally done pretending steady was enough. He did not answer. He went into the guest room and closed the door without slamming it. The next morning he made breakfast as if nothing had happened. Eggs for Sophie, cereal for Liam, black coffee for himself. Not for me. I noticed that. Of course I noticed. He had brought me coffee for years, and now the mug rack stayed untouched on my side. I told myself it was petty. I told myself he wanted me to beg for the little routines he had decided to remove. I would not. At the clinic, Ethan noticed my mood before anyone else did. He leaned on the reception counter during his break and asked why I looked like I had been forced to spend the night with boring people. I laughed because he made it easy. I told him Marcus had taken one joke too seriously. Ethan asked what kind of joke. I said I had teased him about acting old. I left out the part about the children. I left out Nora's face. I left out Marcus going to the guest room. Ethan smiled and said some men hated being reminded that time was catching them. That line stayed with me all day. It made Marcus's silence feel smaller and Ethan's attention feel cleaner. That week, I started staying later around the clinic and the coffee shop. Sometimes there was real work. Sometimes there was not. The first deliberate lie came on a Thursday. The clinic closed at 5 because Dr. Patel had a conference call, but Ethan asked if I wanted coffee before his last training session. I said yes. When Marcus texted asking if I would be home for dinner, I told him the clinic was backed up. It was not a huge lie. It was a useful one. Wives tell useful lies all the time to keep peace. When I came home, Marcus was at the kitchen table helping Sophie glue cardboard planets onto a black poster board. Liam was asleep on the couch with one sock missing. Marcus asked if the clinic had been busy. I said yes. He asked if Dr. Patel had stayed late too. That was too specific. My hand paused on my bag strap, but only for a second. I asked why he was interrogating me about my boss. He said he had passed the clinic after work and the lights were off. I told him driving past my workplace was controlling. He said it was on his route. I said insecure men always had routes that made them look innocent. He folded his hands on the table right beside Sophie's glue stick and went quiet. Sophie looked between us, her small paper Saturn pressed flat under her palm. I smiled at her and said, Daddy was tired again. Marcus did not correct me. That irritated me too. He never fought for the version of himself I gave people, then acted wounded when they believed it. The next few days were full of small, cold spaces. He still packed lunches. He still drove the kids. He still paid bills. Steady Marcus. Useful Marcus. Furniture Marcus. But now he asked exact questions at odd times. What time had I left the clinic on Thursday? Which coffee shop had I used? Whether Clara knew I had been upset after dinner. I explained each one away as jealousy because that was easier than admitting he had started listening differently. My mother told me not to shrink myself for a man who had stopped making me feel wanted. Ethan told me I deserved to be around people who matched my energy. Between them, I felt almost right again. So I decided the next dinner would not be in my house where Marcus could hide in chores and silence. I would take everyone somewhere public, somewhere bright, somewhere he would have to sit across from me and hear the truth without turning into a closed door. I chose the restaurant myself because I wanted control from the first step. Not the family dining room, not our kitchen, not any place where Marcus could turn himself into a helpful shadow and make everyone praise him for carrying plates. I wanted a window table, warm lights, clinking glasses, people walking past, servers moving quickly, the kind of place where silence looked strange and confidence looked natural. Of course, Marcus said nothing about the booking. He only checked the time, asked if the kids had clean shirts, and reminded me that Liam hated the sauce there. That was Marcus. He could remember sauce and forget that his wife wanted to be looked at. I dressed carefully that evening. Cream blouse, gold earrings, lipstick Ethan had once said made me look expensive. I did not wear it for Ethan. I wore it because I still had the right to feel like someone before I became the mother at the table asking children to use napkins. Marcus wore a dark sweater and looked exactly like himself. Calm, useful, older than he needed to look. When we arrived, Clara was already there, sitting with her partner and checking her phone too often. My parents came after, my mother touching my arm in that way that said she was still on my side. Nora came last, wearing her church coat, her mouth already tight before anyone had done anything. Sophie and Liam were excited, pointing at desserts on the menu before ordering dinner. For a few minutes, I almost had the night I wanted. The table was bright. The glasses were full. My mother laughed when I told a story about a patient who tried to flirt while his mouth was numb. Clara even smiled. Marcus sat beside me, cutting Liam's bread into smaller pieces, answering when spoken to, never adding anything that would make people remember he was there. I felt that old irritation climb up my throat. He could sit beside a woman in lipstick and still make the room feel married in the dullest way possible. I started gently. I teased him about ordering water, about checking prices even when we could afford dinner, about acting like dessert was a financial decision. A few people laughed. Marcus folded his hands on the table after passing Liam his fork. I saw it and took it as the sign I always took it for. He had nothing, so I kept going. I said Marcus had been born 43 and had only grown more serious since. My mother laughed into her napkin. Clara looked at me, not smiling now. Nora told me there was nothing wrong with a man being responsible. I said responsibility was wonderful, but it did not exactly keep a woman awake. That landed wrong. I could tell by the way my father cleared his throat and looked at the breadbasket, but I was too far into the performance to step back. Stopping would have made it look like I had been corrected. I leaned back and said Marcus was getting too old to satisfy me anyway, so maybe responsibility was all he had left. The words came out smooth, light, almost elegant. I expected the table to break, to laugh, to turn the tension into proof that I was still the one with life in me. Instead, everything narrowed. Sophie looked up from her pasta and asked what I meant. Liam stopped chewing. Clara's face changed first, then my father's, then my mother's. Nora stared at me like I had put my hand into a flame and called it a candle. Marcus did not move at first. He looked at his plate, then at Sophie, then at Liam. His hands were folded again, but tighter now, the thumbs pressed together. I told Sophie I only meant Daddy liked early nights more than adventures. My voice stayed bright. It had to. Children believe the tone before they understand the words. Nora said I had humiliated her son in front of his children. Clara said softly that I had gone too far. I hated that sentence because it made them sound like a jury, and me like someone already standing accused. I said everyone was acting old tonight, not just Marcus. I said marriage needed jokes. I said Marcus knew me better than anyone and could survive one little comment. Marcus finally moved. He placed his napkin beside his plate, slow and neat, like he was ending a meal that had already ended inside him. He asked the kids to get their coats. Not loudly, not dramatically. Sophie asked about dessert. He told her they would get something on the way home. Liam looked at me first, waiting for me to override him, but I did not. Not because I agreed, because I would not beg my own husband to stay at a table he was using against me. Marcus paid the bill before the main dishes were finished. That embarrassed me more than anything I had said. He made it look like I was the problem. He kissed Nora on the cheek, nodded to my parents, and left with Sophie holding his sleeve and Liam dragging his coat on the floor. The whole table watched them go. For a second, the empty chair beside me felt louder than all the people in the restaurant. Then I picked up my silver bank card and told the server we would have another round. My hand was steady when I tapped the card. The machine approved it with a clean little sound, and I smiled because that sound felt like proof. I could still pay. I could still stay. I could still make the night mine. Clara did not drink the second round. Nora left without touching my shoulder. My mother said Marcus had overreacted, but even she said it quietly. I told myself they were tired. I told myself everyone would calm down by morning. When I got home, the guest room door was closed and a thin line of light showed under it. I opened it without knocking. Marcus sat on the bed with papers spread in front of him, sorting them into neat piles. He did not rush to hide them. He only looked up. I asked if he was doing office work at midnight now. He said he was organising things. Of course he was. Marcus organised everything except the one thing that mattered. I shut the door harder than I meant to and went to bed still certain the restaurant had proved my point. The house after the restaurant did not become loud. That would have been easier. Loud means there is still something to win. Marcus chose quiet, and quiet made every room feel like it had chosen his side before I even walked in. He kept doing all the things that made people call him steady. Breakfast, school bags, trash bins on Thursday, clean uniforms folded on the dryer, Sophie's project board fixed where the corner had bent, Liam's library book found under the couch. Useful Marcus. Calm Marcus. The kind of husband people praised because they did not have to be married to his silence. I told myself he was punishing me. Of course he was. Men like Marcus did not shout because shouting would make them look ugly. They withdrew and waited for you to feel guilty enough to crawl toward them. I refused. If he wanted to sleep in the guest room like a wounded king, he could. I still had work. I still had Ethan. I still had my mother telling me not to shrink myself for a man who had forgotten how to make me feel chosen. But the children made it harder to keep the story clean. Sophie started asking Marcus to check her homework, even when I was sitting right there. Liam followed him into the garage, into the laundry room, even to the mailbox, like Marcus had become the only safe sound in the house. One afternoon, I told Sophie I could help her with spelling, and she said Daddy already knew how her teacher wanted it done. It was a small sentence. She did not mean to cut me. Children do not always know when they are holding knives. I smiled and said of course Daddy knew everything because Daddy had made being careful his whole personality. Sophie did not smile back. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit, so I called Clara. She did not answer the first time, or the second. When she finally came over 2 days later, she stood in my living room with her coat still on, as if she had no plan to stay long. I told her Marcus had turned the whole house cold and was using the kids to make me look like a monster. Clara listened, but not the way she used to. She did not lean in. She did not laugh at the right spots. She looked toward the hallway where Marcus was tying Liam's shoe before soccer practice and said she thought I was not hearing what people were trying to tell me. I asked if she meant Nora, because Nora had been waiting 11 years to blame me for something. Clara said she meant everyone. That word made me laugh, but the laugh came out too sharp. I told her everyone had enjoyed my jokes for years until Marcus decided to turn sensitive. She said people had laughed because they were uncomfortable, not because I was right. I told her she sounded jealous. I told her she had always hated when I could hold a room. Clara's face closed then. Not angry. Worse. Tired. She said she loved me, but she was done pretending I was only being funny. Then she left without coffee. That was new. Clara always stayed for coffee. After she left, I went to the laundry room because I needed something to do with my hands. Marcus was there, folding Liam's school shirt. He held it in both hands longer than he needed to, smoothing the collar with his thumb. For once, he did not look like he was measuring anything. He looked worn down. Old, yes, but not in the way I had joked. He looked like a man who had been standing in one place for too long while people threw things at him and called it weather. He said, without looking at me first, that he never wanted Sophie and Liam to learn marriage by watching one parent laugh at the other. The room was small, warm from the dryer. The shirt between his hands had a little blue paint stain near the sleeve. For 1 second, the words almost landed as something simple. Not an attack. Not a performance. Just a father asking for less damage in front of his children. Then I closed that door inside myself. Because if I let that sentence be true, then the restaurant was not just a joke. The dinner was not just a joke. Ethan was not just coffee. And I was not ready to hand Marcus that much power over my own story. So I told him he was using the kids because he could not win with me directly. He folded the shirt, placed it on the basket, and then folded his hands on top of it. There it was again. That calm little pose like a locked drawer. He said the problem was not one joke. He said it was the pattern. I told him people only used the word pattern when they wanted to make normal marriage frustrations sound like a crime. He did not correct me. He only picked up the basket and walked past me. That night, I tried a new tactic. I told him I could stop making jokes in front of the children if he stopped acting like a victim in front of them. It sounded fair when I said it. Mature, even. A compromise. Marcus asked if I understood that an apology with a condition was not an apology. I told him he was impossible to please. After that, I texted Ethan, but his replies had become shorter. He said work was crazy. He said he would catch me soon. Soon was not a time. Soon was a door half closed. My mother still answered, but even she started pausing before agreeing with me. So I decided I needed a larger room again, a better audience, one where Marcus's silence could not keep swallowing my version of the truth. The larger room was a restaurant downtown where the lights were low enough to make everyone look younger and the music was loud enough to make silence seem rude. I invited 2 women from the clinic, Clara, and a friend from my old neighborhood who always liked stories with sharp edges. I told myself it was only a night out, but of course it was more than that. It was a chance to put my version of the marriage back where people could hear it. Marcus had turned our house into a museum of quiet punishment, and I was done whispering inside it. Clara arrived last and sat at the end of the table still wearing her coat for the first 10 minutes. That annoyed me before she even spoke. My clinic friends asked how things were at home, and I gave them the light version first. I said Marcus had moved into the guest room because I made one joke. I said he was acting like I had ruined the family because I teased him about being older and slower. One of the women laughed, not fully, but enough. So I leaned into it. I said my husband had become so steady that even the walls looked bored around him. I said marriage to Marcus was like living with a polite calendar. I said a woman could only be ignored for so long before she started enjoying attention from places where it was actually offered. Clara lowered her eyes. I saw it. I ignored it. The table needed me bright, not careful. I mentioned Ethan without naming him at first. I said there were men who still knew how to make a woman feel like she had walked into a room, not just crossed off another task. My old friend asked if I meant the trainer from the gym. I smiled because I liked that she already knew. It made the story feel alive. I said he was only a friend, only coffee, only harmless attention. Then I added that harmless attention was still more than Marcus had given me in years. That was when Clara finally spoke. She said quietly that I was making it sound funny because I did not want to hear how cruel it sounded. The word cruel landed badly at the table. People shifted. Someone touched a glass but did not drink. I could feel the room slipping away from me, and that made me push harder. I told Clara she always did this, always waited until I had a room and then tried to make herself the reasonable one. I said she had no idea what it was like to be married to a man who treated you like furniture and expected gratitude because the furniture was safe. Clara said she was not trying to shame me. I told her she had picked Marcus's side because it was easier to defend a quiet man than a loud woman. My voice rose enough for the next table to look over. Good. Let them look. I wanted witnesses for my truth too. I said Marcus was too old to satisfy me in any way that mattered anymore. Not only in bed, in life, in energy, in hunger, in the basic ability to make his wife feel chosen. There it was, the cleanest version of what I meant. A few faces tightened. Clara stood up. She said she loved me, but she would not sit there while I turned humiliation into entertainment. Then she left. No dramatic speech, no slammed chair, just her coat pulled around her shoulders and the back of her head moving through the restaurant. I laughed after she walked away because laughing was easier than following her. I told the table she had always been sensitive. Nobody really answered. When I got home, Marcus was in the living room. The lamp beside him was on, and the rest of the house was dark. There were papers on the coffee table again, stacked so neatly they looked like they belonged to someone with too much patience. He asked if I had enjoyed making him pathetic in another room. Calm, specific, no anger I could grab and throw back. I told him I did not make him anything. I only described what living with him felt like. He folded his hands. I hated how much I noticed that. I hated that it made the room feel smaller. Then I said the one thing he could not deny. I told him he had stopped being my husband years ago and became a house manager with a wedding ring. I told him he knew every bill, every lunchbox, every school form, but not what it cost me to sleep beside a man who barely reached for me. His face changed for a second. Not much. Enough. He could not correct me because it was true, but truth did not calm me. It fed me. I told him Ethan only existed because Marcus left an empty chair where a husband should have been. Marcus looked at me for a long time. Then he said there was still one chance to stop making private damage public. He said I could tell the truth, stop using rooms full of people as weapons, and sit down with him like an adult before everything became proper and final. Proper. Final. Such Marcus words. I told him he was trying to scare me because he had nothing else. I told him he would not leave, not really, because steady men did not know how to start over. I told him he needed the marriage more than I did. He did not argue. He only said he would handle things properly from now on. That sounded like surrender to me. A dull man choosing dull words because he had lost the room again. I went upstairs and called my mother. She did not answer. I texted Ethan, and his reply came 26 minutes later, short and tired. I counted the minutes because I was angry, not worried. 2 calls. 3 messages. Nothing from Clara. Still, I slept better than I had in days. Marcus had gone quiet again, and quiet had always meant I could keep speaking until everyone accepted my version. The papers came on a Tuesday morning, handed to me at the clinic while I was arranging appointment cards behind the desk. At first, I thought Marcus was being theatrical. Divorce petition, emergency financial order, temporary custody request, documented spending review. I read the words twice, then placed the envelope under the counter because patients were waiting and I still had to smile. In court, I arrived dressed like a woman who could still explain anything. Marcus was already there in a grey suit, sitting beside his attorney with his hands folded. That same calm pose, that same quiet face. I hated him for looking peaceful. Then his attorney began. Dinner at our house, the restaurant, my night out downtown, the dates I said I worked late, the coffee receipts, Ethan's messages, Clara's statement, Nora's statement, even the card charges I had waved away as harmless. Every joke had a date, every date had a witness, every witness had stopped laughing before I did. I tried to say Marcus was too sensitive. I tried to say marriage had humour. I tried to say I had only wanted to feel alive. The judge did not take my version the way rooms used to. She said the issue was not one sentence, but a pattern of humiliation, instability, and dishonest financial behaviour. Ethan did not come for me. Clara would not look at me. My mother sent one message saying she could not help with this. The order was short and clean. Marcus received temporary primary custody, control of the marital home, and authority over the protected accounts while the property case continued. My access to the joint accounts was frozen. My savings were pulled into review. Afterward, I went to the ATM because I needed cash for a taxi. The machine swallowed my silver card and displayed one line about court restriction. I stood there with my hands still under the slot. I had called him too old to satisfy me, and he left me with a machine that would not even give me back my card.